It's been complicated, and we have
Ready to
people
get started?
standing.
We'll start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In your packet, pages 1 through 3, you have the minutes of the July 11th, 2023 minutes. Do we have any additions, corrections, comments?
Hearing none, I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Mr. Biden makes the motion for approval, second by Dr. Bell. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any public comment today? Anybody from the public who wants to make a comment? I don't think we have anybody signed up. We'll just move on then. Planning, Northwest Indiana 2015 Active Transportation Presentation by Mitch Barlow.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, good. Everyone sounds so healthy. All right. If you were at our Ped Pedal panel meeting last week, we're getting the same presentation, you lucky people. Maybe one variant. So what we're going to try to accomplish here at this and all subsequent TPC meetings and other meetings as well is really getting you all familiarized with our 2050 plus plan. We adopted this back in July, I guess. I think we did. And we are now in the process, as the new fall season approaches, to roll it out to everyone and to make it clear that there are some great recommendations here. Again, as you know about NERC, we advise and inspire. We don't have any regulatory power to tell any community what to do, but we hope to bring about the best planning possible for you to work off of. Again, what I try to emphasize here, and I make it clear as much as I can, you could easily take ideas that we bring forward in these plans, put them in your own comp plans, and then they become legal matter for all your other documents that flow from that. So we hope you keep that in mind as you prepare your overall plans in your communities, or if you just want to take shortcuts and put them in your zoning and subdivision ordinances, thank you for that too. So again, here's our 2050 plus, the cover of it. It is now online on NERC.org. If you want to read the full 500 plus page document, feel free to. Good reading for you. Lots of information on several topics. We will start today with active transportation for no other reason but alphabetical. Okay, so active transportation being it is. The next meeting we have in the TPC will involve Kathy Luther doing a climate presentation and so on and so forth. Different members of our staff had different responsibilities with the chapters that we created, and of course, active transportation landed in my lap. So what I will first start out with is this familiar, does people need a bank of lights off, do you think, or what do you think, guys? You okay? You okay with seeing it? You all right? Well, you're young. What about other people?
Turn it off for.
Yeah, just hit that bank right there. Is that better?
Yeah.
Chairman says yes. Okay, so with that said, it keeps me in the dark, so I'm happy about that. What you have here is, of course, what is very well known by now is our trail map, our priority corridors map. We have been working and fiddling around with this and revising it for nearly 20, probably over 20 years. It started a little before that I started here 20 years ago in 2003, and we had just put the first routes on, and of course it is burgeoned into a 26 route map that you see in different flavors up on the screen. The blue color, the lighter blue color is our core route, our core network. Those are routes that are either in or funded, and we have nearly 200 miles of those. Very successful story of our trail network. All the other routes that kind of branch off of that, primarily in the darker green, are higher priority corridors. as we go forward with, and again, this is nothing new, this is not a 2050 plus revelation, but as we go forward, we're trying to make sure that other communities can connect into that core network. We still have different areas of each county that are in need of that. Like if you're talking Lake County, we have the St. John connection that we're trying to make, always trying to connect Valparaiso to the network, in Porter County, and of course the city of LaPorte, we get over there in that county. So we're keeping that in mind. And of course, as you know in this room, we have been working very well with trails over the years, but we have to start getting beyond just trails. As I tell people, you just don't get back to your house with trails. People want trails, and people want bicycles and pedestrians only on trails. It's like, well, they can go other places legally. We have to make that safe, and we have to make more of an effort in this region to accommodate our streets for bike and pedestrian safety. Again, if I go home, I cannot simply drive off I-65 in my garage. That would be hard. Okay, so you don't do that. You'll need a series of arterials, collectors, and local routes to make that work, and we're trying to make that happen in Northwest Indiana. So on the front end of that, what we did, and again, a lot of these are hard to read, but I'm just going to briefly go over it. We did a series of preference surveys dealing with all sorts of different types of roadway or bike and ped treatments to these street corridors. Again, this is what we're focusing on, trying to make these street corridors, again, more complete, right? So we have going from left to right, we have Bicycle Boulevard, we have the standard bike lane, the green bike lane, the neighborhood street. And what we did a survey. We put a survey out to Northwest Indiana when we were putting this plan together. Last year, we had over 200 or maybe over 300 responses, either by email or who we met at county fairs. And if you talk about the county fairs, we're talking about well over 1,000 people that we interacted with. And we asked them to take a survey and give us your preferences. And of course, different improvements have different preferences. What we're trying to bring out here is to give public officials the type of confidence and comfort level to implement them at their local level. So we have these 4. We have another 4 as well, talking about a buffered bike lane, a calm street, the off-street separated lane, and the side path. As you can see, as the things get bluer in the pie, it gets more popular, okay? That's what we're seeing here. So people like the off-street separated lane, of course. Anything that they can build separated from that heavy roadway traffic is always going to be appealing. The side path all the way to the right, obviously one of your most appealing improvements. And then, of course, you have other side path improvements as well, depending on the actual context of that particular street. The side path that's all the way to the left is concerning the side path that is built with existing driveways and a neighborhood. Those are not as comfortable as regular side paths because of all of the potential conflicts that you have with all the driveway cuts in there. But again, still a very popular option. And if we continue to a cycle track, the cycle track is pretty much a trail within a street corridor. That's pretty much it. You have two-way traffic within that cycle track. I believe that one that is showing here is Dearborn Avenue in Chicago, pretty much one of the first ones that were built in the country. And then, of course, you can do different things in the buffer between the cycle track and the roadway. Here they have a bioswale in that picture. Everything to the right gets weird. You can see people had no idea what a wool nerf was. And a wool nerf, that is. A wool nerf is a particular treatment that is built in, again, that's a Dutch word, wool nerf, so it's a Holland treatment. But what it is pretty much the entire street is wide open. I mean, the whole thing's a giant sidewalk or street, either or, so people are walking in. So obviously comfort level is an issue there. Some people are not comfortable with that, having their children playing in the middle of the street, but cars are also allowed. But it also gives the cars fair knowledge that you better keep it very slow going through these streets. You never know who's going to be in there and what they're doing. But again, we as a, I'm going to get a jar, okay, Ryan? And for that jar, everyone who kicks those modesty panels puts like a diamond. It's going to be fun. We're going to have that thing filled up within a month. Anyway, we're all guilty of that, no worries. So anyway, the wool nerf itself is something that we have not advanced to as a society, again, because we are very car happy and car centric and we like driving our cars fast. Maybe one day, but not today. So let's get into street hierarchies. The road classification system is well worn in this country, okay? So what you see here is the basic classification system. We have all the way from expressways, which are the double lanes, of course, on the left here, all the way down to your local roads, and you have arterials and collectors that connect them. They all have different kind of names. You have principal, you have urban, you have rural collectors, you have primary. They get different kind of sub-classifications in different contexts, but these are the 4 major road classifications. So what we have to do is plan how we put bike and ped safely on these, of course, except for expressways. We are not allowed to do that by federal law, nor would we want to see it done. However, there are side trails, there are actually trails that are built in interstate corridors. There's one in Detroit that actually has a trail built within there. Of course, very well buffered from the expressway. I think there's a 100-foot buffer between the roadway and the trail. But again, these expressways have very wide right-of-ways. I mean, very wide. You know, you're talking 200, 300, 400, 500 feet in some cases, or even more, depending on your context. And in many of those cases, if you haven't built out the entire right-of-way like we have with the Borman, you can possibly place a side path. Just as a case in point, I'm trying to work with NDOT as best as I can to see if we can get a trail within the I-65 corridor from Hobart down to Crown Point, connecting a series of trails within their right-of-way. I'm still trying to get through the first level of engineering criticism on that, but again, it is an option. If you can create the buffers and the separation, you could possibly make that work. But again, the primary issue here and what we're focusing on is everything from the arterial down to the local street and how that works particularly with the infrastructure improvements. So what we did within this document is put in the context of your particular street, as I just talked about, and talk about treatments that you can apply to those particular streets. Just as an example, if you're looking here, I know you can't read it, but I'll do my best to help you out here. You have Country Lane. Country Lane is that road all the way to the left, as simple as it gets. The type is a country lane. Again, you can say this is very local or very low collector or arterial route. The characteristics, you have a narrow 2-lane street, very low volume, very tight landscape, and that's really close to the roadway. Your average daily travel is less than 1,000 cars per day. The infrastructure direction, as we would apply it here for bicycle and pedestrian safety, would be route designation, advisory signage, and wayfinding, and the user markets, which is the last part here, general use for most people. Now, we get into infrastructure direction. That is what we're trying to apply here. We're trying to add quality and value to your thinking and decision-making process at the local level. So with the country lane, are we asking for a bike lane? No. Are we asking for a side path? No. We're not asking for these heavy infrastructure improvements because it makes 0 sense. Because of the ADT, because of the amount of traffic out there, because of the actual design and context of the roadway itself, it is best to have signage, wayfinding, and some route designation on maps and what have you. That is well and good enough for those particular roadways for both bike and peds. But of course, as we get more and more busier, we're going to need more and more treatment functions. As I continue on here, as we go through the different family of classifications, let's talk about that very top one, the very one to the left, which is called an urban collector. We have many of these within our region. An urban collector is 2 lanes, sometimes it's wide street channels, a moderate volume, which is around 7,000 vehicles per day. And it's an urban section, usually with sidewalks and has good continuity. And then we talk about what you can improve within it. Enhance standard or protect bike lanes. Yeah, side paths at higher volumes, advisory signage, wayfinding, sidewalks, on and on and on. And we talk about the user markets, which is general use with side paths or protected lanes. And it's comfortable with cyclists and standard lanes and experienced cyclists. So we get into this type of thinking about how you can apply this directly into your local context. And we're trying to give you all the information to work with your local officials. I know many people in this room are staff, are people that are working below council members or the mayors of communities, and you need to make the case. Well, we're trying to help you make the case here with these different typologies here. So I think you figure it out. Of course, at the very end here on the right, the gold standard of bike and pedestrian access trails, and of course that speaks for itself. So we try to take the entire family there. Now, not only are we trying to tell you what type of infrastructure improvements would work with what type of functional classification, but we get into those infrastructure treatments themselves and what they mean. So as much as we had the preference survey originally. Now we're actually getting to the meat of what these particular infrastructure improvements are all about. All the way to the left of the screen is the actual bike route itself. Usually, as you can see with bike routes, there is no significant treatment to the street itself. You might have what's called a sharrow, which is that painted bike symbol with the chevrons above it. Usually it's just simply what you see here with some signage within the corridors. You have bicycle boulevards, which is an interesting concept as well, and again, well-defined within this here. I could have an entire presentation on the bicycle boulevard concept. And then we get into enhanced bike lanes, we get into what I believe is one of the best solutions to any urban context, which is buffered bike lanes. Now, buffered bike lane, as you can see all the way to the right, it provides you that buffer, usually a foot or two, in paint between you and the cars. Just having a single line of paint for a bike lane is not very comfortable for most bike riders, as you could imagine, okay? So if you can buffer it, the better. We get, bless you, we get on the cycle tracks, as I talked about before. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Before you move on, back on that buffered bike
Oh,
lane.
I messed it up.
Oh, I'm screwing you up now.
Let me go back.
So we're struggling with a condition on Sibley, which unfortunately Holman Avenue is closed for us, but Sibley east of Holman, we created a buffered bike lane using the vehicles outside of the bike lane, right? We've seen that in Chicago, right? So we were sort of testing that out as advice we got from Jeff Speck, who everyone, we're talking about Jeff, right? So we think that if we move that vehicular buffer further to the west, to almost to the state line on Sibley, that we're gonna have better sort of reception. But right now, well, when Holman Avenue was open, it was murder, because all of a sudden it's just there, right? I know that's different than what you're talking about
Yeah,
here,
No, I get
but
it.
no one expects there to be a parking lane and then, and then a bike lane and then the curb, right? No one's expecting that. So
Right.
it goes right in front of the Baptist church, it goes all the way to Soul Avenue. And it's just really awkward for us to sort of work around. We're trying it out. If it doesn't work, we'll switch it back and make sure there is a buffer.
So they're using the parking lane as a buffer, right?
No, it's curb line, bike lane, parking,
Yep,
travel lane.
right. So the parking is being used as a buffer for the bike lane. So they're, the park
Yeah,
cars,
well,
yeah.
essentially,
Yeah.
right, but when the cars are there, the vehicles make the turn and they go, why is there a car here? What we would have normally thought is a bike lane.
Right, and that is a new, as you said, that's a newer concept, because there's a couple of problems that exist. There's a big problem that exists when the bike lane is on the street side of the parking lane, and that is the dooring issue.
Yeah, well, and it would still happen, only less so because.
Well, it's much less so because of the passenger door, right?
Yeah, it's the
So the driver's door always opens up, the passenger door is not as much.
Yeah.
So I get the thinking, but you're right, it takes some real processing. People are used to parking next to the curb, they're not used to just floating their
Yeah.
car out there.
Yeah.
I totally agree. You almost have to have almost another curb put in between the bike lane and the parking lane to make that work.
And that's your next slide.
Do you have signage, Dean, to at least
Yeah,
warn people that, there's a full travel lane between the car and the...
yeah, I mean, there's signage, but even our own city workers, like, they'll come down off the Holman Avenue Bridge and make a left turn and be like, there shouldn't be cars parked in the middle of the street, right? So it's
What's on the turn, there's also a car sitting there.
yeah, there's a car in the middle of the street, why isn't it up against the curb line?
Right.
And they're like, I mean, city vehicles are like, whoa, hold on a minute, so it's everybody's, I have an
Now,
hard time.
I guess that comes down to what kind of room you had. I mean, again, I think the evolved design philosophy is what you see here, where you have this room for the door, so it's kind of double buffer.
Yeah.
You got the door area, and then they keep people within the green lane, so again, the dooring issue is what you imagine. People open the door and the bike hits it, and that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Because, again, you don't expect the bicycle flying by. But that is supposed to resolve that, and of course, what you're talking about is another way of resolving it too. But again, are they taking into account the passenger door issue too? Because that can be just as bad as the
We just didn't have enough street width to.
And if you
do
don't have the
everything.
street width, and that's
Right.
another problem too, if you don't have the street width, maybe your solution is the best solution. But,
Well, it protects the bike
oh yeah,
pretty darn well.
yeah, oh, yeah,
Right?
bike.
Because then when there's no car there at all, they got all kinds of buffers.
Yeah, my comment was, that Chicago does it, they have a bike lane next to the sidewalk,
Yep.
then they have the parking, like what you're doing, they have the curb, but if you're a pedestrian, and then you step off that curb, you go, there's bikes whizzing
Yeah.
by, and you're not ready for that, so they have signage, don't watch for bicyclists, but like, you have somebody walk out to go to their car and not think about the bike lane.
Yeah. Well, and painted green is a good idea, but
Yeah.
that is so expensive.
Yeah, green paint's not
I
cheap.
mean, so we have to just use it sparingly at this point.
All the green color.
Just advice for,
Well-
anybody thinking about doing that.
Again, what we have here are several, and thank you, Dean, for bringing that to our attention. And it shows you that this is an evolving issue with engineering and design solutions because it's only really popped up over the last 10 to 20 years with the whole complete streets wave. And now how are we going to handle these streets to handle bicycle and pedestrians safely? So again, we didn't address that specifically here, but we addressed quite a bit. But that's a good idea.
Mark said quietly, they just blame engineering, all the time.
Somebody's got
Somebody-
I blame it. This is a room of love. I'm not blaming anybody for anything.
No, I know you're not. But what I get is, who did that stupid idea, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
People will
Thank you.
start to learn and eventually.
And again,
Thanks, man.
the other options too, again, depending on the width of the street, and sometimes the width of the street, if you look at cycle tracks, can accommodate that, but again, with a cycle track, as you can see, you're gonna need a physical barrier pretty much between, because you have 2 lanes of bicycle traffic going, 2 lanes of traffic going either way, and next to a street with 2 lanes of vehicular traffic, so you're gonna need a buffer. Usually it's a raised curb. You also see those plastic bollards now that people are putting up and also tearing out pretty quickly too. That I think is being used in Chicago. I think they're using a hybrid effect over there. But again, that's another option that is helpful and gets a lot of positive reviews. The side path, as I said, side paths come in many flavors. You gotta be careful which one you choose too. The one that we're actually showing here on the bottom picture, that's the one with all the driveway cuts. That again, really opens up some safety concerns for people. And of course, everyone loves trails. I don't even talk about what trails are all about. The trails, of course, are, if you can make trails work in your community, please make that happen.
The other difficult thing about cycle tracks is that lane that's closest to traffic is the oncoming lane. I mean, no matter what you do, no matter what side of the street, so you really gotta protect that.
That's why
Because
you
those
have buffers.
collisions are way worse than with traffic.
Yeah, so you're going counter, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's why you need the buffer. That's why you
And
need the
also
buffer.
with driveways, people are expecting bikes to be coming from
Right.
one direction. They're looking for bikes typically in one direction and not both.
Right. That's why the side path issue is a bit complicated when you have them on, with a lot of driveway cuts. I mean, it can work, but they need to be placed as close to the street as you possibly can, just for that cone of vision issue. Again, this is not an engineering discussion. Everything is discussed quite heavily in the plan, and that's what we're trying to lead you to here. So,
Mitch.
yes, go ahead, David.
Before I forget, you mentioned that people are putting in the little plastic buffers on separate lanes, but they're ripping them up as.
But people run them over.
Oh, okay.
People are not vandalizing, they just run into them.
I thought maybe they were just removing them because they weren't effective, because that's something that's being thought about in Marquette Park.
No, they're very effective, especially if you have low ADT. If you have high travel areas and high speed limits, you're gonna have a problem keeping those in.
Speed limit is 25 in there, and.
Your context is great. Marquette Park is a great place for that. Yeah, because you're crawling around anyway. Okay, so what I wanted to talk, oh, yes, Ken.
Okay, a transportation question,
Yes.
as far as the law is concerned. Does the bike lane have to have green paint?
No,
Why not, there's an ever-growing amount of monies for art design and mural designs in communities. Why not encourage a contest to paint your bike lanes? Because that would certainly catch someone's attention as they're making a turn if they see this colorful lane off to a side. And it would help you not have to spend as much money painting everything green. Still have to do the logo so that, at the intersection it's a bike, but it's just an idea.
that's been done.
So, yeah, it's thermal or multi-compound, you gotta use epoxy or thermoplastic to do it. So you're sort of-
And we ticked off in not doing that. We did that in a few intersections in downtown Gary. Right now, no disrespect to engineers, caveat. But manual uniform traffic control devices is a Bible. It's from years. And right now, it doesn't like tactical urbanism.
Yeah, that's what
And NDOT gave us grief. Hopefully, they'll be revising it sometime soon because their studies actually show that it has a positive impact. Right now, we're doing it on local streets only. We're doing something similar literally this weekend in Miller. But yeah, the city streets are okay with it. The city engineer is okay with it. NDOT, that's another story. And I've had conversations with Tom Novak about, our experiences in Gary and Miller. So it's come up, but yeah, it depends on the engineer.
So, yeah, tactical urbanism is the actual terminology as you're trying to refer to, trying to utilize artwork in particular street. They're usually used in intersection design and so forth, but they have been used in bike lanes. One of the cities that come to mind, Memphis, did a great job with that near Beale Street, and they did a great artistic work within their bike lanes. And I'm not beating up NDOT, trust me, but what I'm saying is NDOT's been a little late to the show. They were one of the last states to adopt the PED bike, the PED countdown signals. When I first started here, they weren't adopting those. So as David said, it's something that hopefully they'll get up to speed with and work with communities on. But you're right, okay. But again, I don't think Dean has a problem with any of that. It's just the actual cost of paint. That's the problem. You have to have paint that lasts, and that's pretty tough, and that's pretty expensive when you get into that type of decision making.
And
Jeff Hewitt had a question or
Well,
comment.
I just, has anybody looked at these painted lanes as they relate to them being wet and bike tires slipping on them pretty easily?
Well, that's why they have to be special type of paint.
They've definitely got to get education out there for that reason. I mean,
Yeah, you just don't throw any type of paint out there. I mean, they have to be tactile. That's part of the complication, cost.
And Dean?
You don't want to walk. You don't walk out with a Callus semi-glosser.
I think Dean had more comment.
Anybody else?
Oh,
Dean?
yeah.
Well,
The
interrupt me
whole
anytime.
tactical urbanism thing is so cool. Didn't you give us a presentation?
Oh, yeah, I
on that,
did.
Where you have these paint that gives you that effect, like whoa, I better slow down because this doesn't look good.
Right.
And it's just artwork on the ground that sort of like makes you want to slow down.
Well, this is why having those symbols on the ground are so important for pedestrian safety. And just basic crosswalk, like the piano keys or what have you, the Abbey Road. People, you see that happening a lot more now. Just seeing that alone alerts people that there is another use within here that we have to slow down. And then when you see an artwork, you're going to slow down even more. You're like, whoa, this looks, and you want to actually enjoy the artwork.
But part of it is just visually deceiving.
Exactly.
Right? And you're like, I'm going to fall into that hole. And it's like, it's
Well,
not really
people
a
have done that. People have actually drawn holes or painted holes. They're like, whoa, no, that's cute. But you slow down, or maybe paint a fake, speed bump or something. Anyway, there's all sorts of different ways of making this work. Okay, so moving on from the actual infrastructure treatments themselves, again, the big focus that we're trying to really work with every community on is the proposed active network. So we're trying to make these streets more accessible for people to get throughout the region safely, to get to your favorite trail safely, to make your own home a trailhead, so on and so forth. The map here, all those red routes, if you see all the red on the screen, those are routes that we have identified for potential treatments. We actually have identified as many as 48 of them through about 48 of these tables in the back of this chapter. So it's very exhaustive. It was great that we were able to work with an outside firm, RDG, out of Omaha, Nebraska, to make this happen because we don't have enough staff. We're not running around doing enough putting out enough fires, that is, to be going out to 48 different routes and figuring out how they work. And just to give you an example of how that works, one of the routes in particular here in the Lake Porter County area is this route. This includes the Main Street route from Munster going east all the way eventually to Hobart, and then utilizing the Prairie Newland Trail in Chesterton. The actual table itself looks like this. Again, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but we talk about Main Street, we talk about what city and county it's in, we talk about the street type, we talk about the length, the channel width. The big thing is when we get here is the recommended infrastructure, which is at the very right-hand side of the table. You read the recommended infrastructure, we recommend the type of treatment you need there. Here, we need a side path or bike and ped infrastructure connected with street reconstruction or widening. There's a second segment of Main Street here. We talk about a side use share path, on and on and on. Every one of these tables are exhaustively shown in the back of chapter 2 of our plan. And again, it helps everyone understand what's going on. Now, if you look at this here, we talk about Main Street, Main Street, Main Street, Main Street, to the very last column or the very last row is the trail. You get to the trail and then whoosh, you're all the way in to the town of Chesterton. So that is a route that you could get from Munster safely to Chesterton. That's what we're trying to make happen here. Trails can't do it all. We have to make it work this way. Now, this is a far more involved one where you have no off-road trail, okay? This is kind of following the State Route 2 corridor from Valparaiso to LaPorte. Again, these are very important communities we need to connect with. They're county seats, okay? They need to be part of the network, but while we're waiting for trail, we have to make it safe to get in there. And there's a lot more going on here, okay? It's double the amount of recommendations, but we're talking about length of 0.21 miles, 0.23 miles, maybe just over a mile, 3 miles, 2 miles, all the way down. That is that fourth column. That is all the miles. That is what we're trying to really get into, this micro-analysis of what you need and what type of infrastructure would be recommended all the way down that line. So again, you as a planner in your communities can work with your public works on and on and on to make this happen with your capital improvement plans and what have you. Okay, that's a lot, okay, and again, I'm going to move on from there. And how are we promoting this going forward? Again, I'm here today, that's great. Social media, constant contact, and what have you. We're trying to make this a very bite-sized, manageable plan for people over the next several months, if not years, until we have to do our next update. This is a plan that is guiding growth in Northwest Indiana. We believe we have some great recommendations, not from active transportation, but as you will see unpacked over the next months here at TPC, other parts with climate, with transit, with freight. Freight is really involved. We talked about many presentations. We don't mind making these. Municipal boards, if you want to bring us before city council, civic groups, chambers of commerce, maybe short of just kiddie parties. But we're welcome to be wherever you want us to be. And we have plenty of staff that we can fan out to the region and talk and break this down. Maybe not just one, but we can do maybe a holistic presentation to help tee them up to review the balance of the document. Of course, we're going to be here highlighting it and like crazy at NERC meetings to make sure you understand what's going on here. Performance measuring as well. We have a very large amount of responsibility regarding performance measures. This came out about 10 years ago with one of the major transportation bills, and it's continued forward. And we're going to hope to keep that up with our website so people can follow along in the public. And of course, we have incentives as well. Our NOFA, the next funding availability, when we actually put that out next year in 2024, it's going to depend on how well you adhere to some of these 2050 principles, and that might affect, and I say might affect, some of the rankings of projects you bring forward. Now, we've been doing this for years, especially with the active transportation, with the trails and the shared use and complete streets. But we're going to probably be a little bit more specific as well about how well are you applying some of our goals and some of our recommendations within this plan to your own local context. So I hope that takes care of that, and there's how you can find me, and that's my new phone number if you haven't called me lately. New in the last 2 years. So other than the great questions that I've already answered, any other questions that I can field at this time?
I got a question for this group. Would it help if we had a workshop with NDOT to resolve some of these issues with specification and design from your municipal standpoint versus their state belief?
I'm going to interrupt you with that, because what we do at NERC now, we actually get a group together. I know there's several in this room that work with us. We have a group of engineers and other community representatives. Every year, NDOT puts out another year of projects for the next 5 or 6 years in the program. And before they actually get programmed, we have an opportunity to look at them, to review them, to make improvements to them, send them back to the locals for their review, and then we send them back to NDOT. So we're already on top of that at NERC, making sure that these NDOT projects can adhere as much as possible to Complete Streets recommendations.
I appreciate that. It
Yeah.
sounds like we need to help evolve NDOT's mindset. And
Well,
maybe that's what some.
I think NDOT's
specification
mindset,
design.
I think they're evolving, I do.
Well, I know they are.
But the problem is, if, again, the most classic example is right in Valparaiso with Vale Park Road. Okay, that's where the city actually jumped in and said, we don't want a 5-lane bridge, we want a 2-lane bridge with a trail, and that's what they got. But they worked with NDOT, and NDOT was able to work with them through that process. So I think NDOT is more than happy to work with them, but they kind of, and that's what we're trying to do, is add value to that process. Because if a community is not sophisticated enough, they're not going to be able to know they can work with NDOT. They can't.
Well, they're faced with a lot of remonstrance too, because of the wetland issues and some other considerations.
And they don't like.
And I think they came up with a solution when they got together.
No, but I think we're trying, just trying to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, we're doing our best to be that intermediary between the projects coming forward from NDOT and what communities can add value to. I think we've had some great success working with them as well. They'll come, just as an example, they'll come in and they say, road, this state road needs to be repaved from here to here. Now, a repavement is what it is, okay? They're not gonna do other things like a side, but we're gonna say we want a sidewalk or a bike lane, or we want a side path or what have you. And even though they might not have the funds for that, they know it's on the radar. So if they ever reconstruct the road, they can consider that. Or if they're just repaving it, they might be able to move some lines around and actually have a road diet, put a bike lane in. Those are things that we want to keep them abreast of.
Just as important as a great opportunity to take the cost of traffic control and focus your projects all at the same time.
Yes.
So there's not a disruption of service.
Well, yeah, that's true too. I mean, how they get fired off, I mean, that's a question for NDOT, and that's a much broader discussion as well.
I think sometimes we just take the path of least resistance, right? So we're restriping one of our streets that goes across the NDOT right of way, and we're thinking, is green paint worth it or not, right? Very high conflict area, green paint for bike lane might be a good thing, but do I really want to jump through that hoop right now to get NDOT to be okay with it? Plus, the traffic volume's going to wear that out quickly, or certainly mar it out quickly. So I'm just like, you know what? When I get there, I'm just gonna pass for now, because it's not worth the I don't know that it's worth the time to try to spin all that up, and then I lose the season waiting for NDOT to be okay with it.
How does the green paint weather, as far as the cold weather, snow plowing, ice?
Well, so it's not ideal, right, because of our weather, but we've had, I mean, on local streets, or even our Holman Avenue, south of 165th, between there and the Little Cow, those areas of high conflict areas, it's held up really well. I've been real happy with it. Now, some of the bike lane markings aren't doing very well, but I think I understand why. But I've been happy with the green paint look, because as long as you're not putting a lot of traffic on it, I think it'll be okay.
Any other questions for Mitch? This was informational. Oh,
Oh,
right.
Mitch, when's that next programming meeting for the NOVA? No, not the NOVA, but for the
Oh.
RC and that meeting.
Well, we need to get one together right away. So if you want to be part of it, we can rope you. Consider you roped.
Thank you.
All right. I'm all done, sir.
Thank you. Next, we have for consideration Resolution 2312, Amendment 1 of fiscal year 2024 Unified Planning Work Program for Lake Porter and the Polk Counties. Comment?
Thank you. Today I'm presenting this resolution to amend our fiscal year 2024 UPWP, Unified Planning Work Program, with a request for a recommendation to approve submitted to our executive board in a couple of weeks. Just as a reminder, and we were here just a couple meetings ago talking about adopting this document. And as a reminder, this is a core planning document required by the US DOT. It's the MPO's work plan as well as our financial plan for the state fiscal year, which is July to June. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing the region. And it addresses the major surface transportation issues facing
addresses the priorities of federal funding agencies, and must be adopted, or I'm sorry, it was adopted on May 18th. And any amendments must be approved both by NERC, INDOT, and the US DOT. Just so everyone's aware, we can, at the administrative level, make minor revisions to budget tables and things like that. But there are certain thresholds that if you meet, it requires an actual formal amendment that has to be submitted through this process. So we are, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about what we're doing here, what we're requesting. The full document was sent out to you all as a link with the agenda packet. I'm not going to go through the entire thing. There's only a few small changes that we're making, but because they have met these thresholds, we do have to go through this process. So the revision to the UPWP includes 4 actions. First, it's going to shift funds to existing projects to ensure that those projects are fully funded. Those projects are the e-commerce sub-area plan, which is, again, it's included in the actual narrative of the UPWP, but it doesn't have the right funding level, so we're going to shift some funding to that. We're also moving additional funding into a line item for LPA planning assistance, which is a program that we've been kind of discussing internally and hoping to move forward. So we're going to add some additional funding to that. In addition, it flexes STBG and HSIP funding into the UPWP. The STBG funding is to fund our TIP software, which is our TIP management program, as well as, and then the HSIP or HSIP, whatever pronunciation you prefer, is intended to pay for road safety audits, which will be kind of intended to prepare communities to actually apply for HSIP construction funding. So both of those projects are actually programmed in the TIP under those funding sources. What we're doing is we're flexing them into our UPWP as required by INDOT. Thirdly, we're removing funding from a project that will not be implemented. We had some funding in here for a regional traffic signal study. That was put into the UPWP by the former transportation director, and it was kind of a placeholder, and the scope was never fully fleshed out, so we're just going to remove funding from that. And then we're adding a new project, which is a nonprofit transportation feasibility study, which is a study to look at the consolidation of some nonprofit transit providers in Lake and Porter County. So we've been working with representatives from those nonprofits, and they'll be funding the local match for this, so this will be shifting some federal money to match that. This is just more detail about how this is going to work. As I said, our TIP software license renewal, we're shifting PL funds to STBG Flex and increasing the amount to cover the total contract. So that originally it was $43,750 in PL. It's going to be now $53,130 in STBG. The road safety audits, again, we're shifting the PL funds to HSIP Flex. Changing the original funding from $125,000 to $96,875, which is what is included in our TIP. And then removing the funding for the regional LPA traffic signal study, adding $50,000 in PL for the e-commerce sub-area plans, adding $60,000 for the nonprofit transportation feasibility study, and then shifting additional funds into the LPA planning assistance / special plans. So those numbers on the right, I'll just note, also include the local share. So that's all of which, let's see, from the HSIP, the e-commerce area plan, the nonprofit transportation feasibility study, and the LPA planning assistance. In all 4 of those cases, the local match is to be funded by a local agency. So the NERC contribution is just the federal funding for that. That is the extent of the amendment. As I said, we would be seeking a recommendation to approve Resolution 23-12.
Any questions? Mr. Buck?
You first?
Doesn't matter. Tom, I perceive being on this committee to your appointment, so one of the things you need to understand, I'm here to represent people that don't know what you do. So the nonprofit transportation
Yeah. Nonprofit-
feasibility study, a little bit more definition on that?
Yeah, so that is this is kind of emerged out of the 2050 plus plan, and it was originally thought of as being a component of our transit chapter. However, the timing was such that we couldn't actually do that project as part of that, so it got pushed out into a separate RFP. So we just went through the RFP process. We do have a proposal that we will be recommending to be awarded a contract. And what it is there are about 14 nonprofit agencies in Lake and Porter County that are providing some kind of transit service. That includes like Boys and Girls Club, Goodwill, Ivy Tech. All these different organizations are providing just very small transit services. Like I said, maybe they're busing some people from one facility to the other. And they kind of got together and said, is there a way that we can work together to consolidate our services in some fashion?
Okay.
And and what would that look like? And so really this plan is about working with, there's 14 that we've identified, 14 nonprofits to examine their operations, look to some examples throughout the state and maybe the country of where they've been able to successfully consolidate some of this, and then come up with an idea for a model for that consolidation. So it's just a recommendation, and it's really to say, these are the overlaps between your services, here's how you could work together. The idea is that one option, I guess, would be to look at one type of agency that can take over all of this. But that's just an option, and it's really open-ended at this point as far as what the ultimate recommendation would be.
Thank you.
Does that include the FTA-funded human service agencies that membership oversees? Or just smaller agencies like the B&G?
I'm sorry.
Or just smaller agencies like the B&G? I mean, we can help them with some mapping and, the area.
Yeah, it would include, I believe, Opportunity Enterprises is one of the organizations that we're going to be speaking with. Part of this is to really look at, as I said, the nonprofit side of it. And it's still open-ended as far as, like I said, what the recommendation would be and how this consolidation could occur. It might be as simple as sharing vehicles, and it might be as sophisticated as, I said, some kind of agency that actually oversees the operations in a consolidated way. So I'd say yes.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Future of our tip software, is there, because we're on our tip, we're back on, I can't even remember the NDOT software. It's sort of duplication of effort. It's sort of, spinning my life up a little bit. I don't want to pressure y'all, but it's complicating us and what we do.
Well, I can tell you that we have one more year on our contract with Eco Interactive, which is the company that runs the RTIP. So over the next year, as we near the end of that contract, we will be looking at different options. We were sort of being led along or led to believe by NDOT that they were going to have something that they would put together and then distribute or allow access for all the MPOs. It doesn't seem like that is going to happen anymore, so we have to sort of look at our options as well.
Okay. Just curious, because, they're making us re-enter all the data, and we're having to do the same projects are you dealing with that too? Same projects every month, and we're fortunate enough to have a lot of projects, but it just is duplicating every quarter. We're re-entering our, doesn't keep the data, so it's sort of
Cumbersome process.
So, thank you, and just,
Yeah,
we're in a contract, and that's what that's for, and it's all good.
And I think they're in truth trying to improve it. I think NDOT had a sincere effort, but I think we're probably going to have to go back to the architect.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? If not, we're looking for a motion to recommend to the commission resolution 2312, which will be found on pages 4 to 5 of your packet.
Motion.
First by Ms. Nelson, and second by Ms. Schrader. I'm ignoring George.
Okay.
I made that up like. Welcome, George. He's here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? So moved.
Thank you.
And speaking of, I'd like to do a round of introductions just for attendance. And I'll start with myself. I'm Kevin Brightsky. I'm the chair of this committee. I'm the council here.
Mitch Barlow, the nurses staff.
Chloe Huang, nurses staff.
David Wright, Director of Public Transit.
Ward Topple, Union Township trustee in Porter County.
Mark Odell, Town of Chesterton.
Dean Button, City of Hammond.
Kay Nelson, Northwest Indiana Forum.
Julie Ritzler, NDOT for Lisa Schrader.
Ryan Lissick, Director in Indiana.
Max Raylander, City of Valparaiso.
Beth Schrader, Public Transit.
Kevin Lee, nurses staff.
Grace Ellinger, nurses staff. Ann White, nurses staff.
Steve King, County Earl. Jim Dammerow, Public Permanent Cypher.
Jeff Hewitt, Sherville.
Thank you all for coming. And some people are drifting in, so it's a timely time to pick up the attendance. Thank you all for being here. And, next, we have Grace Penninger talking about the urban area boundaries update and hopefully clarify the intent and the resolution for what we're faced with. This is something that happens as a consequence of the decennial census. And we create these new urban boundaries, urban area boundaries, and their impacts on the transportation funding specifically in this case.
All right, so I'm gonna be giving you all an update about the 2020 Census Urban Area Adjustment process. So to begin, just to review some context, it's important to kind of understand the difference between a metropolitan planning area versus an urban area. So metropolitan areas are the planning area that's associated with an MPO. So NERC's MPA is defined by Indiana Code as including all of Lake, Porter, and LaPorte counties. And then at a minimum, an MPA must incorporate all applicable urban areas and adjacent areas that are expected to become urbanized within 20 years. So an urban area is delineated by the U.S. Census Bureau every 10 years after the census is completed. And so with that, every 10 years, the census decides how to delineate those urban areas. And in 2020, they defined it as at least an area with at least 2,000 housing units with 5,000 people, at least one nucleus of 1,275 housing units per square mile, and a density of at least 200 housing units per square mile. So what is the adjustment process of the census-defined urban areas? So states and MPOs, in coordination with local officials, may adjust the census-designated urban areas. And the main reason this is completed is for the Federal Highway Administration, which uses the census-designated urban area definition as a starting point, but allows for the smoothing and adjusting of the urban area boundaries, which results in a slightly larger area that's better suited for transportation needs. And the adjusted urban area boundary must include the entire census-designated urban area, so that adjustments may only expand the urban area. It can't shrink that area. And then specifically, Federal Highway asked that urban areas with 50,000 plus population be adjusted. So within NERC's MPA, That would include the Chicago urban area, the Michigan City LaPorte urban area, as well as the newly created Valparaiso Sherwood Forest urban area. So what did the adjustment process look like in 2010? So NERC approved the 2010 adjusted urban area in December of 2012 by resolution 12-25. And so as you can see in this map, at that time, only the Chicago urban area and Michigan City LaPorte urban area met that 50,000 population threshold. So you can see that the dark blue and then the dark maroon was the census designated urban area, and then the areas in the light blue and the light maroon is the adjusted urban area boundary. And then in 2010, the census also differentiated between urbanized areas and urban clusters using that 50,000 population threshold. So you can see that there are a number of urban clusters in 2010, including the Sherwood Forest urban cluster, the Lowell urban cluster, Hebron, Westville, and Carlisle. So what are some of the implications of this adjustment process? Most of these implications revolve around the Federal Highway Administration's programming and funding. So one of the biggest implications is Surface Transportation Plus Grant, or STPG spending. So to review, there are 4 groups of funding for STPG. Group 1, which is large urban, Group 2, small urban, Group 3, municipalities, and Group 4, rural, each with their own respective population thresholds. So MPO select projects from Group 1 and Group 2 funding, although NERC does still work with INDOT on Group 3 and to a lesser extent on Group 4 funded projects. But it's important to note that the state distributes STBG funding using formulas that are based on the unadjusted urban areas. So that's the areas that have been designated by the census. So that is how funding apportionment is produced. Urban area boundary adjustments affect where those funds are spent within the state, not how much funding the state receives. And so another program that's affected by this adjustment process is the Highway Functional Classification System, which differentiates rural versus urban classification. Roadway facilities that are located in urban areas and within that adjusted urban area boundary are classified as urban, and all other roadway facilities are classified as rural. And this is important because specific types of roadway facilities may have different design criteria and federal funding eligibility depending on urban versus rural classification.
On that, are there examples of how that might impact? I just don't have a good idea about how much that would affect a street project.
It would affect in terms of design criteria, so different aspects of how that roadway is designed might change whether it's classified as urban versus rural.
So is this something that INDOT would change the standards for? So if you got STBG for a road that is a local road and it used to be rural, now it's classified as urban, is that going to be a more expensive project?
When it comes to the specifics of that, I'm not exactly sure, but I do believe that when it comes to federal funding, that minor collectors are eligible if they are urban, but are ineligible if they are rural. So I think that's one of the larger implications of that urban versus rural classification funding eligibility. When it comes to specific roadway design elements, I'm not exactly sure what types of elements are affected. Right, so kind of on top of that, the Highway Performance Monitoring System requests that states report their annual highway statistics by highway functional classification, which includes that urban versus rural classification. So that urban classification includes roadway facilities in urban areas within the adjusted urban area boundary. And that becomes pretty common. There are a lot of federal highway programs that adjusted urban area is the definition that's used to define whether something is urban or not. Which is also true with the National Highway Freight Program, which uses that adjusted urban area for the designation of critical rural freight corridors and critical urban freight corridors. And then on top of that, the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program contains traffic congestion performance measures that requires just a single transportation network performance target for each urban area. And that criteria for urban area includes the program, again, uses that adjusted urban area boundary to specify the boundary between locations where signage can be placed beyond 660 feet, which is intended to be read from the highway. So when it comes to Federal Transit Administration program implications, it's important to note that FTA 5307 funds are specifically defined by a formula that uses the unadjusted urban area, so the census designated urban area, to assess the urban area status. However, the MPO transit providers in the states are required to coordinate how that funding gets programmed and spent. Transit providers are also encouraged to participate in the planning activities of an MPO for that urban area. So just to recap, what will adjusting the urban area not affect? So it doesn't affect STBG funding levels. So again, both federal highway and FTA apportion formula funding amounts based on that unadjusted urban area boundary. So again, that means that the urban area boundary adjustments affect where STBG funds may be spent, not how much funding an MPO receives from the state. And then functional classification, so beginning with map 21, roadway functional classification is no longer tied to urban versus rural, but as I was speaking to earlier, the inventory and reporting still sorts roadway facilities as rural versus urban using that adjusted urban area boundary definition. And then transit, again, FTA does not consider adjustments to the urban area for any purpose. It's the census-designated, unadjusted urban area that's critical for defining those funds. So from from August to July, NERC staff met with the communities that are on the edge of the urban areas to discuss the adjustments to the urban area boundary. This is an interactive map. If you zoom in, you can see here the dark blue, the dark purple, and the dark orange, as well as the smaller urban areas in Westville, Lakes of the Four Seasons, and Lowell are also designated as urban areas. And then the lighter blue, the lighter purple, and the lighter orange, and then this lighter yellow are the areas that have been adjusted. So if we zoom in, the St. John area, you can see that the urban area boundary was adjusted to include all of 231 out to the state line, and then was adjusted to provide continuity between St. John's, Cedar Lake, Cherville, and Crown Point. Additionally, section southeast of Crown Point was also included along the 65 corridor. And then here you can see, so the Lakes of the Four Seasons was designated as an urban area, but doesn't meet that 50,000 population threshold. Although this area was still adjusted in coordination between NERC staff and the the city or the town of Winfield to incorporate all of Winfield in this Lakes of the Four Seasons urban area, considering this area had previously been designated urban, and to provide some consistency with roadways that would potentially be bouncing from an urban area to a rural and then back to an urban area. And so still examining the Chicago urban area adjusted boundary. It extends north along the county line and then east along US 30. And then it kind of meets the Valparaiso Shorewood Forest urban area and the adjusted areas. And so the major boundary that kind of differentiated between the Chicago adjusted area and the Valparaiso Shorewood Forest adjusted area was 149. However, this boundary just kind of jumped back to include this census designated area north of Valparaiso. And then the Chicago urban area continues north up to the lakefront along that 49 corridor. It includes all of Chestnut. Moving over to Michigan City and LaPorte urban area, all of the town of Pines was included. And then areas around Michigan City were also included to include areas that may become urbanized within that 20 years, as well as account for the major intersections of 94 and 421, as well as 94 and 20. And as we go southeast, you can see that the area was adjusted here to provide continuity along Johnson Road in between Michigan City and LaPorte. And then a large area north of LaPorte was also included. That's kind of in line with their proposed annexation plan, as well as this area southeast of LaPorte. If we zoom back out, we can see that quite a large portion along the coastline in southwest Michigan was also designated in 2020 as part of the Michigan City LaPorte urban area. And then kind of bringing it back to our kind of final approval process. Part of our plan is to meet with Southwest Michigan Planning Commission on adjusting that area that extends from Michigan City up the coast of Lake Michigan. So just an overview. So last meeting at the TPC, we kind of presented our draft adjustment to the urban area boundaries, which many of you were here for. And then, as I mentioned before, from July to August, staff met with those individual communities to kind of fine-tune those adjustments to the urban area boundary. That kind of brings us to where we're at here in September. Staff is waiting on guidance from federal highway representatives in order to coordinate action on adjusting both the Chicago urban area and the Michigan City LaPorte urban area, as those urban areas do span across multiple states. Staff will then coordinate with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, CMAP, as well as the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission, CMAP, on submitting those final adjusted boundaries to IDOT, MDOT, NDOT, and then finally federal highway. Staff will then present the final urban area boundary to TPC, their October 3rd meeting, and hopefully receive final or recommendation for final approval by the commission. And the NERC Executive Board will vote to approve the final urban area boundary adjustments. And then NERC staff will send the approved adjusted urban area boundaries to NDOT for review as soon as possible. Once NDOT has reviewed and approved the final adjusted urban area boundaries, the boundaries will be submitted to Federal Highway for final approval by December 29th of this year. anyone has any questions?
Mr. Tothel and I had a lot of discussions about this because the impact on Charlotte Forest, his constituency. And, George, do you have any other questions for him at this time?
Tomorrow night, our board has a meeting, and we're quite concerned so with Charlotte Forest because they don't seem to understand the process or what impact it has on our township in general and their POA, which is rather large. So I wondered if we might be able to get the representatives from Charlotte Forest and perhaps some more Union Township people to understand better what impact it may have on us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it if you could set up that meeting.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll be in touch.
I think part of the confusion too with these urbanized areas is somewhat misleading because there's a refer to the Valparaiso, Charlotte Forest urbanized area. And there's not really an effort to combine or to annex
Right.
those in. It's just the naming of the area is
Correct.
somewhat separate from some of the other urbanized area.
Right.
And that's where the STBG funds for highway start to factor in. And we're going to have to deal with that from a funding aspect.
Isn't this kind of a big deal? This is, the implications of this to me seem like a big deal. Because now we're including those Michigan communities into our MPO, right? And then they're going to be accessing the funds. In that case, in Group 2, right? They'll be accessing the funds that Group 2 has. So those, obviously, when they, I guess I should wait till I hear that answer. Is this a big deal? What's Michigan? Well, I'm talking about Group 2, right? So it has nothing to do with it. We're in Group 1, so it doesn't affect me. But if you annex them in, they have now access to the funds that NERC has.
So beginning in 2010, a portion of Southwest Michigan was part of that Michigan, the city of LaPorte urban area. So what NERC did is we met with SpringPAC, Southwest Michigan Regional Planning Commission, and we had put together a planning agreement that essentially says anything in Michigan will be your responsibility for all NPOs, for the planning and programming. Anything in Indiana will be Direction's responsibility. So one of the things that Grace mentioned is we're meeting with SpringPAC later this month to talk about that agreement. And our approach is to continue the same relationship, which is to say we're just going to sever the urban area at the state line. And we'll have to change the numbers and things in the agreement, but the relationship will basically be the same.
And therefore, the funding that would be eligible for that UZA would then go to Michigan's.
So they'll receive basically a proportional amount for funding. So.
Gotcha. See, that's what I was worried about. Right?
Well, and understandably, in fact, we worried about it years ago. I was here long enough to have been involved with what we call the Wing Spread Accord with Northeast Illinois and SewerPAC, which is Southeast Wisconsin Planning Commission. And then a few years later, I was chairman of the commission at the time. We brought in the fourth MPO, the Southwestern Michigan people, and the whole purposes were to kind of negotiate how we were going to handle this, not to turn over or to create annexation, because we still need to maintain our state's individual rights and their way of doing business. So that there's, I think there will always be a separation based on the state boundary.
I'm just thinking, when we have these NELFAs and LaPorte County and the city of LaPorte sort of get together and talk about, we sort of have a give and take on what projects are going to get done. And if you complicate that with those Michigan communities, that relationship between those communities sort of gets gray or fuzzy, right? Because now there's more competition in the funds available.
One of the fundamental reasons going back to Wing Spread Accord, just to make it clear between all of us on the onset. So this is kind of 20 years of ongoing working cooperation, collaboration between the different MPOs. We're very fortunate in the Midwest, and I've often said, those 4 MPOs would have a world-class economy just unto themselves, because you consider Milwaukee, Chicago, all the way up to the Southwest Michigan. It's just an amazing population and contribution to economy.
Question. Has there been anything in writing on the impact on the RTA split for federal funds with Valpo and Sherwood Forest being a separate urbanized area? Right now, they're part of the Chicago, Northwest Indiana UZA. Does that change funding levels? And can they say that explicitly? Yea or nay?
I know what you're saying.
To answer your first question, we do believe that it will impact funding levels. We don't know to what extent. And to answer your second question, can we get that in writing? No. We've been trying to work with FTA and actually the NDOT Transit Division, Department, whatever the terminology is, to actually get some formal response as far as what the impacts will be, and so far we've been unsuccessful. Essentially, our I guess, what we think is going to happen is that we're just going to have to wait until those apportionment tables are published, and then we'll know where the funding will go as far as the Chicago urban area, and where the funding will go as far as the Valpo Shorewood urban area.
That's the same position we've always been in, where Chicago, the RTA gives us a bunch of numbers and saying this is what it is, and we have to react to it. And sometimes they have trouble and pushback telling us how they come up with that. It's going to have a change. It's going to have there's going to be funding levels because of the transit generated by the Porter County agencies. Then there's going to be density changes. That goes into their formula as well. Something from Region 5 has to come. I mean, we can ask the same question, and we'll start asking the same question. If they get it from more than one designated recipient, maybe they'll get off the hooks and actually write a letter. But waiting until the RTA dictates to us how much money we're going to get is not optimal for any of the designated recipients, us, NERC, or NIC.
Where should the apportionment tables usually?
Well, actually, it's so it's going to be a while.
It really depends on when the final budget comes out, and that's a whole new level of headaches that we'll have to deal with in DC.
So that would be spring for the next federal fiscal?
Possibly
So
2024. Possibly
spring, and then take
2024.
effect October.
Well, we're in federal fiscal year 24 already.
Right.
And we have grants. So it's a good question.
Because like David, I think I'd be happy to with you if that was of assistance.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, that's a good thought. Maybe given the situation and amendments that we find ourselves in, it might be a good idea to get a group together, maybe submit a joint letter or something.
More less. More better from.
Or maybe,
Well, I mean,
very.
instead of coming emails from NERC, if all three designated recipients did something jointly, maybe that will happen.
Field trip. Show up.
We know where you work.
No, that's a good idea. Let's talk about that.
This is something you can forward on to the commission, because we're just going to make a recommendation, but I like the idea of having a committee to address this, to formalize some kind of letter to FTA, the other agencies we have to deal with. Because honestly, I haven't seen the answers. It's just.
Well, FTA is really they're really, really hesitant to put something down in writing. They'll tell you to take a look at a reg, refer to that, circular, but they won't give an opinion until you say, can we do this? And they'll say no.
You're reading my mind. But unfortunately, that's how we have to play sometimes.
We did, Dr. President did have a few comments on the urban area, and I plan to send those to you by any day today.
Thank you.
And likewise, anybody else here or who's listening to this broadcast, please send staff your comments.
Yes.
About the only way we can address them if we know what they are.
And I believe those are due on Friday the 15th.
Yes, correct.
I might add, perhaps, Beth, someone from Valparaiso could meet with Shore Forest and Union Township to kind of figure out what it all means.
Okay. I would say, honestly, we're somewhat in the same boat as you. We don't entirely understand how it impacts us, but,
Maybe working together, we can get an understanding.
Bottom line is, now's the time to get involved with it, because you can give it some direction, push it in the right direction. That's your will.
Seems to me like you're getting expanded into the UZA, and that's a good thing for you.
Well, it could be,
Right,
but
I mean,
but
it's
I have
all
to answer
positive.
the questions with the public, and I don't know the answer.
But getting into the UZA is a good thing, because then you're having access to federal money.
Well, I think it is, but I don't know that to be able to explain to my constituency.
I guess the downside is you drop out of Group 3 money, right? That would be the downside, is you don't have access to Group 3 money, but is that a bad thing? I don't know enough about the Group 3 funds, or Group 4 even, so
Jeff?
My understanding is they've always had access to federal funds, only instead of through NERC, through NDOT.
That's correct.
So-
Will now be through NERC, which
The new urbanized areas will now be through
yeah,
NERC.
because now you got a voice at the table, where before you sort of just pick up.
Well, I think that's probably the key thing, if that is the fact.
I think that's what I was trying to get to you, the
I regret
thought I
all
was
that.
trying to get to you when I saw you last week.
And I think the benefits are clear, at least to me. Now, the liabilities are, I'm not sure.
But you understand that I'd like to get it from somebody who is
Yeah.
more knowledgeable
That's what we're working
about
for.
it than, and can support whatever I say.
Well, we don't know if we can do that.
In regard
Come on,
to this
George.
issue. In regard to this issue.
We'll try to help.
Thank you.
Appreciate the staff's attempts at working with us on that. It's complicated. And this was just informational. Actually, at my request and George's request, so thank you to the staff for doing that and creating some special drawings for us to. We have topical committee reports. Anybody want to make a topical committee report?
Yep. I got a couple of them to make, and then we have other people in the room. I'll start. 3PC, Penpel Paddle met last week. We had a presentation from Dustin Anderson, who is the town manager for Munster, and he presented us on the Ridge Road Complete Streets project. A pretty large endeavor. They received a RAISE grant, and like we did with Marquette Greenway, but they've actually got their sign. So they're looking to get that complete on Ridge Road. I believe it's going to be west of Hyman Avenue there, and they're going to work on several design improvements there to improve bicycle pedestrian access and safety, and it's a $17 million grant, so quite the help in their regard. Did the same presentation you saw today on 2050 Plus. The Market Greenway was updated as well. That is a meeting in its own right. We're still working with the FHWA and the Office of the Secretary of Transportation to get our grant agreement signed, and we're working very close to getting it done finally. And just so you know, a major trail is looking to open up with Maribel New Road and C&O Greenway from Oak Ridge Prairie going down to Taft Street. and that's about a 2 to 3 mile stretch. Maryville and Lake County Parks are working together on that. And what you may not know about the geography is Oak Ridge Prairie already has the confluence of the Erie Lac and the Oak Savannah Trail. Now the CML Greenway will come out of that to the southeast, and you'll be able to ride your bike from there, and you'll pick up an Orange Julius over at South Lake Mall if you wish to, once it's complete. So we're looking for the opening of that trail probably. Steve, do you have any idea?
You're probably looking, sometime, before, summer next year.
Okay, so getting close on that one. I know they're heavily getting construction in right now, but that's another big feather in our cap here for our regional network. And if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I do have an update from the Land Use Committee. Let me make sure E-Man is not able to be with us. Land Use Committee met last month and included a presentation from the City of Portage on their downtown revitalization plan of Central Avenue and the surrounding area. If you have any questions about that, please contact E-Man. That's all I have, sir.
Or AJ Monroe, he had a great presentation for the
AJ
future
Monroe.
Do we have any other topical committees today?
Is Scott here?
Drive Clean Indiana.
All right, good morning, everyone. So grant funding is available. I do have printouts on this as well, and I'll send them to Flora after the meeting for more review. But there's the 2023 National DARA program. That is the Diesel Emission Reduction Act program. That is from the EPA Region 5 office for our area. Essentially, it's 25% off diesel replacement, 35% off CNG and LPG replacement, 45% off all electric replacement. And as part of the replacement, you do have to put a hole in the engine block and cut frame rails on either side of on-road vehicles. Applications are due December 1st. Most likely, these projects will not begin until July of 2024 and will be a 4-year project period. There was a 2023 IDEM Community Recycling Grant that's due September 20th. Grants range from $1,000 all the way up to $100,000. There is a minimum 25% cash match. The Indiana NEVI funding is available. This is federal funding that is managed by INDOT. This is 80% funding off of DC fast charging infrastructure. Applications are going to be due November 1st. If your municipality is interested in charging stations, please feel free to reach out to me if you want to go after this program. Program updates, we submitted a 2023 Clean School Bus application for a total of 100 school buses. It was a total request of $38 million, 86 electric school buses, 14 propane buses. In the area, we had School City of Chicago, School City of Hammond, Michigan City area schools as well. Portage had a really good article come out for them with their 7 CNG trucks running on renewable natural gas. That was in the Chicago Tribune. There was a video as well that we created to highlight the project. You can't click on the link here on the piece of paper, so follow up with me if you want to watch it. Upcoming events, we do have the Indiana Clean School Bus Consortium going on today. We are going to be launching the state's electric vehicle program, which is going to be Go EV Indiana, Go EVIN, and that will be launched on the 15th. We do have our Clean Air Golf outing on the 19th at White Hawk Country Club, and we will be having a NERC EV 101 presentation and ride and drive on October 5th. So please register for that if you want to come out and learn more about electric vehicles and drive some as well.
Thank you. Is that all?
That's it.
I did learn quite a bit by going to their annual Drive Clean Indiana conference and look forward to the potential of hydrogen as an alternative. 10 years ago it was about electric. Now more of the talks toward hydrogen becomes feasible. We still have a problem with the science, with the engineering, but it's getting closer to the time where there might be an alternative fuel.
Yes, we're looking to have some big opportunities here, especially in Northwest Indiana.
Do we have any regional partners here today? I don't see anybody. Okay. Then I'll just announce the upcoming Finance and Personnel Committee, September 21st for NERC at 8 a.m. And then NERC Executive Board Commission meeting will be September 21st in this room next week. And our next meeting, I don't know, October 5th will be October 3rd.
The week earlier.
October 3rd.
Is that a week early? Is that a week earlier?
Yeah. A week earlier because of the commission meeting.
So that would be Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023 at 10 a.m. Thank you, Mitch. And it's on next week. Any other thing good for the cause? If not, I'll ask for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Button, and second from Mr. Liddell. Thank you for bearing with us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.